And I'll break it down into three different aspects. The first is the strategic grammar set by Operation Sindoor. Think of it like fighting a disease. When you fight a disease, you have two options. You either address the symptoms or you address the illness. In our world today, increasingly people and countries are addressing the symptoms. So airstrikes are performative, not targeted. Naval deployments are symbolic, not strategic. And military acquisitions are a message, not a mission. In peacetime, such an approach may work, but when you're constantly dealing with a terror state at your border, it won't work. And if it wasn't clear already, the symptom in this case is terrorism, but the disease is the powers across the border that support and sponsor this mindless violence. Operation Sindoor targeted the symptom and the disease. It shattered the feeling of invincibility and safety that Pakistan's terror infrastructure long cherished. The smoldering Lashkar headquarters in Murid was proof of that. So was the flattened Jaish headquarters in Bahawalpur. And with those strikes, India spelled out a new strategic grammar that went beyond neutralizing the henchmen. It was a policy that targets the men who give the orders, as well as the men who carry out those orders. As this operation continued, multiple Pakistani military bases were also hit, again expanding on the new grammar. And it was probably summed up best in the declaration that came after the fighting ended, when we told the world that henceforth an act of terror will be seen as an act of war. I think it marked a monumental shift in our approach to fighting terrorism, because this was also an acknowledgement that this fight is not just ideological, it is political. We are not just facing radicalized madmen, we are facing ruthless scheming generals on the other side of the border. So any deterrence policy must target them as well. Unless the planners and the godfathers feel threatened, feel vulnerable, you will not win this war. And that's what India did during Operation Sindoor. We imposed costs on the Pakistani state as well as on the terrorists. As far as policies go, it was a bold one, I think. It's also a sign of a confident and clear-minded country. You cannot declare such a policy unless there is utter political conviction and clarity. You cannot declare such a policy unless there's military superiority and prowess. India has both, and it is not shy to flaunt it. So that's the first aspect, strategic grammar. The second one is strategic clarity. Why are you launching a military operation? What are your core objectives? And how far are you willing to escalate? These things sound like routine planning for a major operation. But it appears that they're anything but routine, because look at the world around us. Wars start, but never end. Deadlines are set, but never met. And goals are defined, but constantly changed. The result is endless wars with casualties that run into tens of thousands. Look at the war in Ukraine. It does not resemble a 21st century high-tech conflict. It reminds you of the world wars from the previous century. Close, bloody, ruthless fighting. Or look at what happened in Gaza between 2023 and October this year. When the fighting started, the world largely supported Israel. But as the war dragged on, as the casualty count rose, that sentiment shifted. I think this is where India's Operation Sindoor succeeded, because right from the outset, the goals were clear and they were unambiguously explained in public. India's actions were described, and I'm quoting, as measured, non-escalatory, proportionate, and responsible. The goal was to punish and deter terrorists and their backers. The goal was not to spread fear and chaos. It was not to shake up the regime in Islamabad, and it was certainly not optics. And for the general public, it may be hard to understand. We in the media were covering what happened. And people wrote to us all the time, and most of them had one question. If we were winning, if we had air superiority, why did we stop? That's what people asked us. Why did we not make moves into Pakistani territory? I think this is the answer. Because it was never a part of the mission objective. We've all grown up watching Hollywood movies, and they make you think that you go into a war and then, things develop on their own. Maybe they do, but I think professional militaries stick to the mission, especially when the mission is going well. And that clarity gave India an edge. Our military controlled the escalation ladder. They also landed the final blows that forced Pakistan into seeking a ceasefire. So to put it simply, India showed restraint and clarity. I know these qualities are not appreciated these days. We live in an Instagram world. People want theater and rhetoric and threats that can be cut into reels with dramatic background music. But this is warfare, and this is the real world. So when lives are at stake, clarity and restraint matter. It's what separates a professional and powerful military from a performative one. The third aspect I want to focus on today is strategic autonomy. India did not ask or inform anyone before launching the strikes, and we did not end it because someone told us to. I cannot overstate the importance of this. As Indians, we often take strategic autonomy for granted. We think, what is the big deal about making our own decisions? Because that's what we've always seen. It's par for the course. But again, let me turn to the conflicts of our times. Why did Israel agree to end the war in Gaza? Not because the people of Israel voted for the war to end, certainly not because the Netanyahu government wanted the war to end. They ended because the Americans forced them to end the war. Apparently, it was Donald Trump's son-in-law and his golf buddy who designed the peace deal. Imagine that, 2 years of fighting, and this is how it ends. If you look at Ukraine, it's a similar story. Their president was humiliated in front of the whole world by the US leadership. And now they're being forced to take a peace deal, even though they may not like it, even though that deal may reduce Ukraine to a rump state. This is why strategic autonomy matters in our world, because you cannot count on the global community to protect your interests. Forget protecting your interests. You cannot count on them to truly comprehend your interests. And that leaves you with two options. You either leave your fate to your powerful so-called friends, or you take matters in your own hands. India has always chosen the second option. Operation Sindoor was a perfect exercise of that strategic autonomy. And it's important to not confuse it with self-sufficiency or Atmanirbharta. It's a part of strategic autonomy, but not a prerequisite for it. You can use Russian air defenses and French Rafales and still be the master of your own fate. It's not the cards, they say. It's how you play those cards. Our armed forces used both indigenous and foreign weapons. We briefed our partners, but after the fighting. We upheld international norms, but never put them above national interest. These are the hallmarks of strategic autonomy. Could we have done something better? I think the sense is that we won the war, but we may have lost the story. Because in this day and age, in this post-truth world, you also need to ace your messaging. And this is where the media, traditional and social, comes in. It's a strategic tool, and it's something that we have to work on. So to recap, India has displayed three crucial traits during this conflict with Pakistan: a bold strategic grammar, strategic clarity, and strategic autonomy. And we did it in the true spirit of our country. This is where I must commend the armed forces in their professionalism, because it's easy to lose your way in high-pressure situations. It is easy to get carried away by your successes. It is much harder to remain poised, graceful, and professional. In those few tense days, Pakistan's military represented the worst of their people. We saw arrogance, boasts, and misinformation. In contrast, we saw the best of India in our armed forces: inclusive, professional, and restrained. Which brings me back to the original point that I made. Power is not just about hard numbers and missiles. It is about how you exercise those abilities. India has always used its power to protect its people and its neighbors, never for expansionism, never for boasts, and never to hurt innocent lives. And that distinction is what makes India a deserving world power. Jai Hind.